Let's be honest, the UK's rental market is in chaos right now. For millions of us, renting is just a fact of life, but the ground is shaking under our feet. Landlords are selling up in droves, and it's creating this huge shortage of homes. So what on earth is actually going on? Let's get into it.
This number, this is right at the heart of our story today, 290,000. That is the number of rental homes that have just vanished from the UK market since 2021. And let's be clear, this isn't some tiny blip on the radar, it's a massive, massive loss that's putting incredible pressure on anyone trying to find a decent place to live.
So here's the big question, right? For years and years, the private rental sector was the fastest growing part of the housing market. It was an absolute rocket ship. So what happened? What flipped the switch? Why, after all that explosive growth, is it suddenly going into reverse? To figure that out, we've got to rewind a little.
To really understand why the market is shrinking today, we first have to see how it got so gigantic in the first place. This story really starts with the boom of what we call buy-to-let.
I mean, the scale of this growth was just staggering. It was all fueled by easy credit, and this buy-to-let craze saw regular people buying up properties left and right specifically to rent them out. In about 2 decades, the private rented sector in England literally doubled in size, peaking at almost 5 million households. It totally reshaped how we live. But you see that small dip at the very end? That's our starting point. That's where things start to go wrong.
So what stopped the party? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this powerful combination of pressures that basically created a perfect storm for landlords.
Okay, so think of it as a 1-2-3 punch. First, the government slapped on a new tax that made it more expensive to even buy a rental property in the first place. Then, they took away a really crucial tax break, which meant landlords couldn't deduct all their mortgage interest from their rental income anymore. And the final blow? The massive hike in interest rates, which sent mortgage payments through the roof, pretty much wiping out profits for a lot of people overnight.
And you can see the impact of that triple punch right here, clear as day. The number of new buy-to-let mortgages was literally cut in half in just over a year. The cheap credit that had been fueling this whole boom for 2 decades, it just vanished. The tap was turned off, and new investors simply stopped coming in.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about the numbers, it's about who is leaving the market. See, not all landlords are the same, and these pressures are hitting different types of owners in very, very different ways.
So on one side, you've got your individual kind of mom-and-pop landlords. These folks own almost all the rental homes. We're talking around 98% of the entire market. They are the ones getting absolutely hammered by the tax changes and high mortgage rates. But on the other side, you've got these huge institutional investors. Think pension funds and big corporations. They're professionally managed, they finance your deals differently, and they are actually growing their portfolios of these big, shiny, purpose-built rental blocks.
Wow. This quote really just says it all. For every one landlord buying a property right now, about 5 are selling. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't a small adjustment. It's a mass exodus of the small individual landlords who for decades have been the backbone of the entire rental market.
And all of that selling creates this massive supply gap. So yeah, the big investors are building these new build-to-rent homes, but it is nowhere near enough to fill the hole. Look at the numbers. For every 1 new BTR home built between 2021 and 2024, nearly 6 existing rental homes were sold off. We are losing properties far, far faster than we're building new ones. Okay, so given this major shakeup, this huge shift, what does the future of renting in the UK actually look like? Where is this all heading? Let's take a look at the projections for the rest of the decade.
Now, before we get to the forecast itself, we've got to talk about the assumptions. These are the ground rules. So, the model assumes interest rates will slowly come back down, tenant demand will stay sky high, and that all the planned new rules on things like tenant rights and energy efficiency will actually become law.
Okay, now look closely at this table, because the real story is hidden in plain sight. If you look at the total column on the far right, it looks, well, kind of flat, right? It dips a little and then barely recovers by 2030. But that flat line hides the real drama. The number of homes owned by individual landlords is set to fall by 300,000. At the exact same time, institutional ownership is predicted to grow by 5 times, reaching 500,000 homes. The entire ownership model is being completely rewritten.
And this simple chart just sums it all up, really. After all that turmoil, all the selling, all the building, the total supply of rental homes is only expected to grow by about 100,000 over 7 years. For a country with this much demand, that's basically just standing still.
So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this term, a structural shift. That's what we're witnessing. It's a fundamental change in the DNA of the market, moving away from a model based on millions of small-time investors towards one with a much bigger role for large corporate landlords.
And all of this leaves us with a really critical question. The rental market of the future looks like it's going to be more professional, with more corporate owners. But if this new market doesn't actually deliver any more homes, what does that mean for the millions of people like you and me who are caught in this rental squeeze? Is a more professional but less available market really the future we want?